Yep, so I'm recording class. I'm recording this class. It's a disclaimer. That being said, where is it? Let me open the slides. Then I'll share my screen. So this screen now has, pretty much the slides. But before doing that, I want to show you that. Oh, is this done? That I did upload the video for last class. I apologize for doing it kind of late, but it's really not going to affect your studying just because today we're just going to do projects. So when you go towards the weekend, now you can watch that video. Once you finish watching this video, now you can watch the project for today, and then just make everything stick pretty much. So that next week, Tuesday or Monday, depending on when I get the last board, we can start with Jenkins. But today, what we're going to do, the project we're going to work on, is going to be a CI/CD pipeline. Pretty much what Jenkins is there to do, right? So if we can do that project all the way in AWS and you can see the steps I explain along, then you already have an idea what Jenkins is there to do. And if you're working on a company that's predominantly AWS, you might not even need Jenkins, right? You might just need the CI/CD pipeline that we're doing to start building your pipelines and working. But because Jenkins is a legacy application, all the recruiters, all the companies that don't even know what DevOps is, they're going to put Jenkins on the resume, right? That's why it's nice to know Jenkins. But there's so many other CI/CD tools out there, but like I said, the most important thing is to understand the concept of CI/CD pipeline, how it works, and what you're trying to achieve in the pipeline. So I think today will be a really good class. This is where the fun really starts. I did prepare for this project, so I'm not expecting any hiccups along the way. I'm not expecting any surprises along the way. So that being said, I'm hoping that everything goes smoothly. Because like I said, I never prepared for the classes. But for this particular project, I did do it to make sure that we didn't have any hiccups along the way. So this video is up. It's actually a really long video. It's posted. You should have received a notification for the video for last class. So it is up. This is a slideshow. So anyway, so I know yesterday we talked about CloudFormation. I know that one was a really challenging topic. So when you watch the video, like I said, you don't have to, master CloudFormation. I did post the video in the chat yesterday about me using CloudFormation. I was using CloudFormation to bring down a stack that we had deployed, right? And that stack, guess what? The entire stack, I didn't write it. It was already written for me. I just used it. And then I just use the same stack to bring that application. So like I said, you don't have to be a master of these things. Most of them, once you understand what it is and what it does, you're always going to find the code online somewhere. And for that stack that I worked on yesterday, it's code that it was already written for me to deploy an application, and I just used it. So don't be scared. There's no rocket science here. That being said, so this is where the project we're going to work on is going to be on CI/CD stack. I don't know if I talked about CI/CD, but CI/CD, obviously, in the introduction to DevOps, we talked about CI/CD as in continuous integration and continuous delivery, right? The CI stands for continuous integration. And if you remember from the first day of class, continuous integration means when I'm pushing code, it automatically gets built, right? Even if it doesn't automatically get built, but I can trigger the build from my code. And then CD means it's a continuous delivery. Or sometimes they go as far as saying it's a continuous deployment. So which means that once CI completes, which means the code is built and prepared, it gets deployed, which is into your application. So to say that in layman's terms, what I mean is, if you have your regular Walmart.com, I love that Walmart.com example. Let's see. If I open my regular Walmart.com, oops, I didn't spell Walmart right. When I open my Walmart.com as a DevOps engineer, what I mean by an application going into production, getting built and getting deployed, what I mean is, let's say, for example, you're looking at this website, you're a developer, you're working on the back end of this website. And let's say business or customer, whatever it is, business comes and says, okay, I think we might get some really nice benefits if we start putting Valentine's Day. You see Valentine's Day on this website? It's because Valentine's Day is approaching. After Valentine's Day, you won't see this on this website. So this is a feature change, basically here. So let's take this as an example. What is going to happen behind the scene before you see this Valentine's Day finds here is that the customer or business is going to say, oh, Valentine's Day is coming. I think we could make, it's obviously an opportunity for us to make money because people are going to buy for their boyfriends and their girlfriends. So now we need to deploy a Valentine's Day link on the main page. So as soon as someone goes on Walmart.com, they can see Valentine's Day, fine. We need to deploy it. This is going to be a change in the code, right? The front-end code. So as a DevOps engineer, how that ties into your CI/CD pipeline is that there's going to be a ticket for this feature that you're seeing here. We call this a feature because it's something that you can take off and you can put on. So it's a new feature. So you're going to see a developer or a bunch of developers might work on the similar things to bring up this feature. When they finish in that code, they're going to push it into a code repository like GitHub, right? Like we studied. Once they put it into GitHub, the CI/CD now, your CI now is going to build now your code, and then your CD is going to deploy. And when I say deploy, I mean it's going to make it appear on Walmart.com like you see now. And all that usually is an automated process. So that's CI/CD, and that's why DevOps is the #1 position in IT right now, because we're able to make these things happen in seconds. Back in the day, changes like this would take months. You know why? Because first of all, you have a monolith, right? Like we talked about. So to make one simple change like this on the monolith, you have to bring the entire Walmart.com down. And then, no one wants that. So they're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and say, instead, for us to bring Walmart.com down, why don't we wait until we have a bunch of changes, right? So that when we bring Walmart.com down, we can just make all those changes at once. And then it ends up taking months for you to make a simple feature change. So that's why DevOps changed the game, and that's why DevOps is such a high demand. Because one, we try to break down a monolith into microservices, and two, we make sure that changes like these, like valentinesday.com, and all those fancy new changes you want on your website, we can do that in minutes. So if today someone says, oh, avocado is the #1 product selling now, a developer can just quickly go and make a change and put avocado on the front page. And guess what? As soon as you put avocado on the front page, now we start getting a lot of sales, right? Because why? Once he makes that change, the CI/CD automatically builds and deploys it, and bam, in a matter of seconds, you have your change. And you're going to see that happen in real life. How changes can be. It's going to be a granular change, but it will give you a good idea. And that's why DevOps is the boss position. Was that clear enough?
Yeah.
What the CIC is trying to achieve. All right, cool. So now, before we go into our actual project or talking about CI/CD, I just wanted to revisit one thing that I was doing last class, and I just wanted to review that real quick before we get into our project, so you can actually see how you can push images. So where's that page? Seems like my mouse, oh, this is clicking. My Chrome just froze. Oops. My Chrome just froze. Let me see if I can open a new window. Oh, looks like Chrome is back. All right. I open a new window, seems to have helped. But back to this. So you remember last class when we did when we created our repository and we were talking about how we can, this is where you build and push images. This is your ECR repo pretty much. So I just wanted to show you before we go into CI/CD, I thought it'd be nice to show you just real quick how I can build an image really quickly on my machine, and I can push it and you can see that image right here, Docker image. So these are the commands I told you about too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my terminal here. So this, I'm going to bring up my terminal. And what I want to do is I want to bring up my IDE because I don't want to use this regular system, right? I want to use my IDE. So there's a Docker file here. Let's see. So, okay, so we have our our image here. We have this, remember I told you that the way you build Docker files is by using something we call, the way you build Docker images by using something called Docker file. So this is a very basic Docker file. We're going to talk about this when we're doing Docker, but you start with the from. So from Ubuntu is pretty much saying Docker pull Ubuntu, okay? When you see from Ubuntu here, it's the same as saying that Docker pull Ubuntu. That's the same command. But in the Docker file, you just use from. But that means that this Docker file just does what? It pulls our Ubuntu image, it updates the image, it installs Nginx, it copies this file you see here, this index file, out into the image. It exposes port 80 because that's where the web page is displayed, and then it uses a command to restart Nginx. But I just want to build this into an image and then push it into ECR. That's all we're doing, just so you can see the process. So I'm just going to follow the command. I'm going to, it even gives you, it says, okay, this is how you authenticate. So I'm going to authenticate. I'm authenticating. Before you authenticate, make sure you have Docker running on your machine. So if you don't have Docker running, you're not going to be able to authenticate. So you see, it says login succeeded. And I was having the errors last time because the reason why I was having an error last time, in case it was telling me that it's a non-TCI device, I downloaded my AWS CLI, which we're going to talk about after the project. And then I created the credentials, which we're going to talk about after the project as well. But anyway, now my login is, I already logged into my repository. And now I want to build an image. So it even tells you here to build an image, this is the command you use, Docker build. So I'm going to run that command. And I'm expecting to use this Docker file here to build my image. And you realize there's a small dot here. Do you see this dot here? This dot here, you're telling Docker that I want you that my Docker file is located in this current directory. That's why this dot is here. I never knew this before. So yeah, so you see my image has already been built. So we can go there step by step. You see, it pulled that image. It did whatever I needed to do. And it was pulling it from cache. So this is another good concept. So because I already built this image before, Docker does something that we call caching. So instead of doing the whole work all over again, it just pulls that information from cache. So unless I do a serious change here, like I could say, if I make a big change, then it's going to have to create it from scratch, right? If I say, like I could say, run ls-la. If I add a command in this Docker file, I already made a change to that Docker file. So there's no way that's going to be able to use the caching because the file has changed. So that being said, I'll try again to rebuild that image. And you see, because I made a change to that file, it had to do everything from scratch. So it didn't build the image in 2 seconds like it did before. Now it's going to take some time because now instead of using cache, it's going to do everything from scratch. So now my image is building from scratch. It's just a Docker build. Once you go to your ECR, you're going to click on commands and it's going to show you all these commands. So you can practice it yourself. So my image is built. So if I want to see my image, I just run Docker images. And you see my image here, DevOps. This is my local machine. So now what's the next step? The next step is to tag my image. So I'm going to tag my image. And it's already been tagged. And now I want to push my image to this repository. So I'm going to push my image to that repository. And you see it's preparing. And once it prepares, it's going to push my Docker image. So this is just a regular Docker image that anybody can pull if they have the right access. So that's the application right there. So now what we've done is we've taken an Nginx application that would display this web page that you see here. It will display this output that you see here on the web page. We've taken that and we'll put in an image. So if I send this image to Alpha or Bajo or anybody, if I send them this image and they run it, they're going to have exactly the same application all bundled in a package. So that's why Docker is so important. So you see my image here? This is my Docker image has been pushed. So now any application on AWS can consume this image. So remember we talked about ECR yesterday. Now instead of putting Nginx in my ECR image, I can put this image there. I can just copy this image, this image here. I can just copy this and put in my ECR. And my ECR is going to consume this image just like we consume any other Docker image. So just keep that in mind. I just want to show you that demo real quick. Any question?
Is this related to what we're doing today?
Well, this relates to the entire pipeline. I just wanted to show you a demo because the pipeline will be a demo because last time I know I tried to push a demo, but I was having some authentication issues. But you know, this is just me showing you how you can build and push images to your ECR. Because as a DevOps engineer, you're going to do this. You have to, especially if your company uses Docker images, which I think almost all the companies I've spoken to, they use Docker images. I mean, there might be some old, yeah.
What is ECR again?
Yes, trust me, you're going to do this if you're going to be in DevOps. You're going to be building and pushing images to ECR.
What is that?
I guarantee you that.
What does it stand for?
Elastic Container Registry.
Okay, all right.
It's a container registry. Remember, we talked about what the registry is, right? You need somewhere to store your images, so that's what the registry is. So in your registry, you have separate repositories with separate applications, pretty much. So anyway, that's just one thing I thought it would be nice to show you this demo so you can see, because I didn't get to show you the last class. But yeah, this is completely different. But we can still build pipelines that can pull this image, but this is not going to be part of the pipelines that we're going to build today. But yeah, it's always good to for you to see these things in action because when you go to interviews, you want to, how are you going to show them that you've been deploying Docker images if you don't even know where to store the images or where the images are getting stored pretty much. So yeah, so that being said, let's go back to what the project that we're supposed to work on. So CI/CD, like I said, continuous integration, continuous delivery. So now AWS has its own stack, right? So if you were someone that was so biased on AWS, oh, I love AWS. Oh yeah, so you have everything. You don't need Jenkins if you have AWS, right? Because you have a complete stack in AWS. You have a code commit. Your code commit is basically your GitHub repository in AWS, which means that you can push code and you can pull code from here, right? You can do git add and git commit and then git push into your code commit. So AWS has its own GitHub. And then you have code build. Code build is basically where you can, if your code needs to be built, because I remember I always tell you, whenever a developer pushes code, it has to be built, right? So code build is what does the building for you. Code build is also what you use if you wanted to perform some kind of testing on your code. And then code deploy, essentially what it does is what the name says, just deploys your code to your application, to your website. So for example, remember the change we were talking about on Walmart? When the build is done, code deploy will deploy that to your server, to your Docker images so that you can have your new Valentine's Day images displayed to your customers so they can consume them and the company can make money. And then code pipeline is what puts all of this together. So code pipeline will take code commit, code build, and code deploy and put them all in a pipeline where you can visualize your pipeline going from step to step. It's pretty cool. So that being said, another thing I want to add is, like, remember I showed you what a YAML file looks like? Code build uses a YAML file to build. It's called the build spec.yaml. You're going to see those files. Code deploy uses an YAML file to do its deployment. It's called aspect.yaml. So these two they use because you have to obviously you have to get specifications when you build. Otherwise, in your applications, you don't know what you're building or what you're trying to do. So that's what the YAML file is going to do for you. That being said, this is a visual representation of what the code commit will do in this project that we plan on doing. So we will create a repository. We're going to push code inside that repository, right? And then that code will be in your AWS account. So basically, this is exactly what we're going to build a repository, push, build. So code commit is going to be your GitHub. So remember, GitHub is where you store your code, but Git is a concept of building and pushing code. So GitHub, you store your code. Code commit, you store your code, but you're using the same technology, Git, to add, push, and commit that code. So don't get that mistaken. And then once your code is in code commit, now you need someone to consume or build that code, right? So code build will build that code for you. If you need any building, for example, it's a Java application, you need Maven to build that code. Use that to build it. If it was HTML, you won't need to build, but you might need to make one or two, changes, whatever it needs, right? If your code needed testing, this is where you put your test your code. You can put multiple steps. So you see your developer, he pushes code into code commit, which is our GitHub. And we already did Git, so I'm expecting that everyone knows at least to Git add, Git push, and Git commit, right? It's essentially what we do here. We push into Git commit, build it, and then Git code build now pick up that code, because code build automatically has an integration with code commit. So once you push in that code, you're going to go to this is a build spec.yaml. Remember, we're going to do all this in practicals. I'm just giving you the concept, but I don't just want to jump in there. Once I give you the concept and you have at least some idea, once you jump in there, it will make a little bit more sense. So this is your build spec.yaml. In this file, we're going to say, okay, this is what I want you to build, and these are the steps I want you to follow. You copy that code, you build it, and then the next step obviously will be to deploy, which is going to be code deploy. This is our code deploy guy. So you've seen how we're building that pipeline slowly, right? The developer pushes code into code commit. Then after code commit, this is where the code gets built. And then when the codes get built, code deploy picks up that artifact from code build, and then it deploys it to your EC2 instance. Remember, we're going to use an EC2 instance today, but know that you can use the same idea. Keep in mind, you can use the same idea, the same pipeline to deploy to ECS instead of an EC2, and you can use the same idea to deploy to EKS, which is Kubernetes. It's all the same concept. It's all the same steps. The only difference is for ECS, instead of deploying a code, you're going to be building a Docker image, pushing it to ECR, and then picking that Docker image from the ECR, just like we did previously, and then pushing it to ECS pretty much. But remember, it's the same idea. And then now we have code pipeline that is going to put everything together. So our code pipeline, we're going to be able to visualize the entire process, where the developer pushes code, builds that code, deploy that code. And then remember we did a little bit of SNS, which was the notification to my email. I can always make sure that whenever the code gets deployed, I get an email, right? Whenever the code gets deployed, we get an email. Or you can say, okay, I want a manual approval. Instead of me sending my changes to production, I want someone to come and look and make sure everything's okay. So once it gets to this point where it needs to deploy to my production, you send me an email saying code is ready. So I have to come and manually approve, and they will push it to production, which most companies, they do this because people are always scared. You don't want to, fear of the unknown. So someone will come look and make sure everything's okay, and then push it to production. So that's it, guys. So now I think now it's time for us to do this project. Like I said, once you're done with this project, once we go through this project step by step, you're going to feel like an AWS DevOps engineer. Like you all know, I'm certified in AWS as a professional at the highest level. And guess what? We did something like this when I was studying. So we did the entire pipeline. I did a lot. Maybe I went a little bit more into the aspect of YAML file, but pretty much I built this pipeline part of my studying. So what you're studying here is what those professionals study. What we're going to do, the project now will do, is what those professionals will do. And guess what? How does that benefit you? Now, when you go to an interview and you're talking to an engineer too, you can pretty much think about what we did in this class, right? And now you can explain to them like a real-time project that you did. But guess what? You didn't do that project, but you've seen it, how I done it, and you've gone and watched the video, and you've probably tried to do it yourself. You face some errors, you contact me. Maybe you're smart enough that you didn't face any errors, but this is a real-time project. This is real life. What we're going to do today is what you do in real life. The only difference is you might get a little bit more sophisticated just because you're dealing with a huge code and things like that. But the concept is, like I said, it's the same concept, the same pipelines, trying to achieve the same thing, trying to make a quick change. Yeah, any question before we jump right into it?
Which code are you going to be using for tonight?
Well, I'm just going to be deploying a basic HTML code, right?
Oh, okay.
Basic HTML, and no, this is not it. Let's see. How many compromises real quick? So this is basically the script that I'll be using, right? This is basically what I'm going to upload to my code for me. So keep in mind that this code, this is HTML, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I'm expecting now when my whole pipeline is done and complete. I want to see this hypothetical web page. So let's just look at this change, this web page like Walmart.com, right? That's the mindset I want you to have, because you know, when I'm studying these classes and from these engines and all, when they teach you, what I realize is they teach you this stuff in concept, but they don't try to relate it to real life.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're just studying code, studying the steps. But then if someone was to tell you that, imagine, look at this as this, look at this as this, and then it makes a lot more sense, right? So what I'm telling you is, once we work on this product, I want you to look at this simple HTML like a Walmart.com.
Okay.
Yes, that's the vision. Because when you work with the company, you already have that idea of what the change is. So yeah, we're looking at this like this is Walmart.com code that we're trying to deploy. And then when you come to, remember I told you that for the code build, it needs a file called build-spec.yaml, right? This is a YAML that we talked about yesterday. This is simple YAML. It gives you a version. Faces essentially, I'm just saying that this is the commands I want to run. You could put any Linux command here, guys. As you can see, this is just bullshit commands that appear, right? In a real life, you put normal commands that you use to build and things like that in this YAML file. That's basically the only big difference. And then when it comes to deploy, you need, yeah.
Where's this file, this DevOps file you're looking at?
Well, it's in my local machine, but you know, I think what I'll do is I can push it to my GitHub.
Yeah,
and then once I push it to my GitHub, I can put the link in the video. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we can work with it.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, man. Yeah, so what I'll do is when I'm compiling, obviously, the video to put, I'm going to push it to my GitHub, and then I'm going to put in the video as well, so you can just use the exact same thing I'm using.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It may be a stupid one, but
There's no stupid question, bro.
So, what if instead of saying we would pretend that this is the Walmart code, what if you actually use the Walmart HTML code?
Well, the difference between the Walmart HTML code is, you see those images in the screen? Those images are going to be stored privately by Walmart and be able to access by that web page. And not just that, Walmart.com web page is not going to function well if I just use the HTML for Walmart. You know why? Because when you see that Walmart page, it's different all kinds of applications that you use to build different aspects of that website. You understand? For example, the interaction will be different, right? Adding products to cart, remember, those are all high-level functions that we can put in HTML. HTML is just, remember, HTML is just the front end. But most of the time, when you have a front end like Walmart.com, you need a heavy back end to support all that information you see in the front.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then when it comes to code deploy, right, you need aspect.yaml. And if you notice, what I'm telling code deploy to do is, you know, it's simple. I'm just saying that I want you to copy this file you see here, right? Our code, our Walmart.com code. I want you to copy our Walmart.com code, and I want you to put in this, our var.html, and this is where web pages get deployed. So if you go to a company and they're doing redirects and they're deploying HTML code, if you go into the servers that have that code, you go to this directory via w.html, you're going to see that HTML code in there. I can guarantee you that. So what I'm saying is, I want you to copy this into my HTML folder so you can display that web page pretty much. And the code deploy will be able to do that. Yeah, and then what else we have? And then this is our code, and then we have our README, obviously, which is just me explaining. I'm going to add a little bit more information to this README. And I want you to know that when you're working as a DevOps engineer, when you create a repository and things like that, make sure on your README, you put all the necessary steps. So if there's any other information that I want to add, I'm going to add to the README so you can easily follow along. And then if you look at these scripts here, just basic scripts like I'm going to install, obviously, my web server, right? I'm going to install my web server. I'm going to start my web server. These are just basic shell scripts. And then I'm going to have a command in case I wanted to start my web server, but we don't really have to use this at all. So this is all what we're going to be working with today. This is for, remember, this is for code deploy, this is for code build. This is our code, our walmart.com that we're trying to deploy on our web page. And these are the scripts that, these are basically just trying to work on our EC2 instance that we're going to deploy. Anyway, that being said, we're going to start from the absolute scratch. So when I say absolute scratch, I mean that we're going to first of all create our application. Oops, why don't I need to sign in again? So now we're going to create our server where we're supposed to deploy our application, right? So what I mean is, if you are trying to deploy a Docker image, now you'll be creating your ECS, right? Or you'll be creating your EKS. But now I'm trying to deploy on an EC2 instance. So I need to create my instances where I'm going to do my deployment. So remember, you can do this on CloudFormation, but I want to do it from console so you can follow along. So when you go and you write your code, you can follow along. So I'm going to launch the instance. And this instance is what I will deploy my application on. Remember last class, was it Boris? It was you, right? Asking me, what do we need no, it was Alpha. I think Alpha was asking me if what the server is the web pages, right? And I said, no, the server is just what you use to deploy. Whatever you do with your server, that's your business, right? But your server is just a tool that, that just keeps your application afloat. So if I take this server and I install Docker, that's my ECS already. So we're just going to build a server where it's going to hold our application. That's what we're doing right now. So I'm just building a basic EC2. This should be pretty familiar with us right now because this was the first thing we did in class to be able to build EC2. So I'm going to build our regular EC2. This is going to be where our application is going to be running. Keep that in mind. I'm using the default VPC. I want this EC2 to have a public IP so that when I deploy my application, I can easily come to this public IP and see my application, right? As opposed to maybe deploying a load balancer. So that's why I have this enabled. Remember, your public IP will be able to help me look at my application to make sure that my deployment was successful. That's all I need to change there. You basically use the default VPC and then enable to enable your public IP. And think about it, I could create multiple instances of the same and deploy to both of them. And then use a load balancer. But for now, I just need one. And one thing I want you to also keep in mind is, remember, this is what I'm also going to add to the GitHub code that I'm going to push, the user data that I'm using. And let me open that user data that I want to use. And I'm going to obviously explain a little bit what that user data does. So this is a user that, no, definitely not this one. Where is it? This one? Yeah, this is it. So I'm going to use this user data. So class, I'm assuming that we remember what user data is. Do we?
Yeah, that's so you can add commands that you want the system to run as soon as it's installed.
Bootstrapping, exactly. That's what user data is. So I want to make my life easy. So if you notice here, what I'm saying is I want to create, when I'm creating this, so I want to install some things that we're going to need, right, for our deployment. And a very important fact that I want to tell you is, we need Ruby and we need wget. The reason why we need wget is, you see this wget command? Use this command to download any application online. And so keep that in mind. As a Linux, wget, you use it, and you supply a link to any binary, and wget will download that thing for you. Easy. So we need wget and we need Ruby. The reason why we need Ruby is because our code deploy code needs Ruby. And remember, code deploy, the way code deploy works, guys, this is a very important concept, because not just code deploy uses this kind of concept, but different kind of applications use this kind of concept. Code deploy, for me to be able to code deploy to be able to do this work, you need to install the code deploy application on the web server that you're going to deploy to, right? And this is exactly these are code deploy agents. That way, code deploy is going to know what application it needs to deploy to, and then the agent is going to be able to deploy the application for you. So what my user data will do, I'll post this in the GitHub so you can use it, you can follow along. But I mean, this is what this shell script is doing. It's installing Ruby, it's installing wget, it's changing to my home directory, and you don't have to worry about this. I just took it online. But this is essentially, if you already had code deploy, it's going to kill it, delete it before reinstalling it again, right? So you can do this project without these 3 lines, but I just added it. And then now I'm going to download code deploy, because we need code deploy to be able to deploy on this EC2 that we have. If you wanted to deploy on ECS, keep this in mind. If you want to use code deploy, ECS, EKS, Kubernetes, you have to install these agents on Kubernetes to be able to deploy to it. Keep that in mind. So if you're using code deploy, you need code deploy agents. So if you go to an interview and you're talking about CI/CD, you want to let them know that code deploy agent needs to be on that agent to deploy. Once you tell them that, they know that this guy knows all the same. You know what I mean? So these are just little things that you keep in mind, when you're talking about things like this. There's 1 or 2 things I want to say, someone knows this guy knows what he's doing. That being said, I'm going to use wget to download that application. And trust me, if I use wget on my local right now, it's going to pull this application for me. If someone was curious, I could use wget right now and download this. So that's what wget does. And then I'm going to use a command that we should be familiar with. This is Linux, to change it to an executable. I know this is a domain of Bajo. Change mode, right, Bajo? I know we had some issues working with this.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm downloading this application called install. This is it right here. And then I'm changing it to an executable using our chmod, which we've been doing. And then I'm executing it. Once this is done, we should have code deploy running, right? But then I need to start it. So I'm just going to start it. And then I'm going to install my web server, and I'm going to start my web server. Those are all 4 lines. And remember, you could type each of these one by one on your server, but we don't need to do that because of shell script. So all of this is going to run. So this is not rocket. So remember, we're just downloading our dependencies, pulling this code, changing it to an executable, executing it, starting the application, installing the web server, starting the web server. We need it so we can be able to deploy to it, right? Once I start my web server, now when I copy my index of HTML, it's going to display it when we're ready. So any question about this user data? Okay, cool. So I'm going to post my user data in there. And the hope is that before this EC2 is complete, we should have all of this already set up for us. There's automation, guys. And then storage, I'm just going to take the default storage. Tags, this is important. This is important. I'm going to say it, I'm going to shout it out in case you're watching this video again. You need this tag to be able to deploy. Why? Because code deploy made it so easy that you can deploy to an application by the name, or you can even deploy to a bunch of applications by tags. And this is going to be, it's not a trick question, but I just want to see if someone has been following, right? How important do you think this tagging? Let's say I'm telling you that you can deploy by tags, right? So how important is this? How flexible is this? And how creative can you be when you have the ability to create by tag? Trust me, you don't have to answer it. I just want to know. How can you use these tags now to be able to deploy effectively? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
I mean, I'm thinking if certain resources are tagged with the same tag, you can then basically launch all those resources at the same time with maybe just one command instead of having to,
Man, Alpha, man, you hitting in the head there. But yeah, the only thing I'll add or change is
Also,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Baja.
I was trying to say that the tags are also important in case you want to switch. Let's say you want to switch to another version, like you want to change the versions, like move from one version to another. You need those tags in case you want to go to a new version, or you want to use the version that was the old one. You need those tags in order to switch without having to go into details to make the changes.
Yeah, you need those tags. So yeah, exactly. So those tags is what the easiest way I can say. Exactly, guys. I'm happy guys are following. This tag is like a grouping, right? So think about it. If I wanted to create 3 environments, I can use my tag to say, okay, environment, development, right? And then I create another bunch of applications. I said environment, production. So now I already have 2 sets of environment that I can deploy to, right? Completely isolated. Remember, environment, I can even go as far as saying using, which I used before. Anything you want to use as a tag, you can use. I can use purpose, and I can put demo, right? So with this tag, now, this is my environment. I'm telling them that, okay, this environment is a development environment. I can come back and create another environment or another EC2 and tag that one as environment equals production. So now when I'm deploying my first part of my application, and before it goes to production, which is what the consumers are going to see, I'm going to first of all deploy to my tag, which is dev, and make sure that everything is working. And then I'm going to put that in my pipeline. Once I deploy to my dev and it's working fine, now the pipeline is going to promote that now to my next set of environment, which is tag production, right? Which is the one that's going to go to our consumers. So now I can put the manual approval in between my tags for dev and in between my tags for production. So whenever I goes into dev and I validate everything is good, now it's a manual approval. I come and I look at my dev environment and say, oh yeah, everything is good. And then I click on my manual approval and then it deploys to production and now my consumers can see. So you see how important that tagging is, right? That's why I keep telling you, always use tag. So we only have one environment in dev, but you can create dev, you can create QA environment, you can create production, you can all tag them whatever. You can tag 10,000. Trust me, if I put this same tag in 10,000 different EC2 instances, I could be able to use code deploy to all 10,000 applications at once. Can you believe it? Yeah. So yeah, so this are all, man, this are all information that I'm feeding you all, and I want you to all to keep that in mind, write it somewhere, because this is valuable information, and I'm giving you the way that I think that you could use it in whatever you're trying to achieve. So now we're going to our security group. So my idea is that now we know what security groups are, right? If you've been watching the videos, which I highly recommend, which is the right thing to do, you should know what security groups are. So when we get to places like this, you really know what we're doing, and it makes life easy. So now, since we're deploying a web server, what do you think we need to make sure it's open in our security groups?
480 and 443.
Bam, 480. We also want to make sure that we have port 443. We're not going to have, really 443 at this point is not going to help us. When you're doing a real live application, you need 443. So I'm just going to add it. So we need those ports open just so that we can be able to access the application. So we're all putting everything together, guys. The EC2 that we studied in the first day, that's why I decided that instead of using ECS or EKS for this project, I will use EC2 instance, what we've been studying. When we get to Docker, Kubernetes, then we can start working on projects using ECS and Kubernetes. But this is what we studied. We studied how to create EC2. So I decided that let's build a pipeline with EC2. So it makes more sense. So we've done our EC2, we've got to security group. We talked about security group. I've opened what we need to open. And then now I want to launch my application, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and launch that application. And there's one thing, I just remembered now. And I did face some issues with this. So I think there's something in AWS called instance rows. So it's basically I remember we studied IAM rows, right? How you can create users and things like that. So there's a part where you can create rows for your EC2 instances. So now so let me give a little bit of background. AWS decided that any instance, any EC2 instance, in fact, any application running on EC2, EC2 cannot contact code deploy. EC2 cannot contact ECS unless EC2 has a permission to, right? And the reason why that's important is because if that wasn't the case, it means applications can leave from EC2 and hit other applications and cause problems. You know, you might run an application in EC2 without even knowing that this application is a volatile application, right? And then it goes around and causes all kinds of damage. But now they made it such that you have to provide a certain role to your EC2. If I want my EC2, if I want that this machine, you see this machine we're building, this EC2, I have to make sure that this EC2 cannot perform any function by itself, right? To prevent any kind of attacks, you know, without, so I wouldn't give it, but if I wanted this EC2 to be able to do anything on AWS, if I want this EC2 that, if I want that any application running on this EC2 instance can be able to access other applications, you know, I'm going to give it a role that permits it to do so. So that concept, it just came out to my head, and I said that I'll bring that up. But you see here, this is where you can attach a role to an instance. You see, I created a role for EC2, and this role for EC2, I gave it administrative permission. So I'm telling them that I want this EC2 to be able to contact any application. But we're doing this, keeping an eye that we need to use code deploy on this EC2. So EC2 needs to be able to allow code deploy to pretty much do its work. It needs to be able to use the code deploy agent. So I know that sounds, even to me, that sounds kind of confusing. So let me try to explain this again one more time. If I have my EC2 instance, any application running on that EC2 instance, right? Any application running on that EC2, if you go there, install a web server, if you go there, install anything, for that EC2 application that running on that EC2 to be able to do anything out of that EC2 instance, it needs to have the right permissions too, right? But AWS made it easy that instead of giving each application in your EC2 instance a role, you can just give that EC2 instance itself a role. And then every application that is in that EC2 is going to inherit that role. Does that make more sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to explain. I'm sorry, my bad. I was just trying to make it complicated, but that's exactly what. So this role that I'm giving them, any application, in this case, our code deploy agent that we installed using our user data will be able to inherit this role. So keep that in mind. So if you ever go to work, these are things that I figured out at work and doing hard work. But if you ever go to work and you notice that you're having permissions denied from your applications in EC2, the first thing that you should think about, and when you get to this part of the video, I want you to write it down. The first thing you want to think about is, does this EC2 instance have the right instance role to perform what it's doing? And trust me, that's going to save you so much time, because majority of the time is because that EC2 instance you're trying to use to perform that role or to perform that script doesn't have the right permission. Let me give you one more example, because this is an important concept. Let's say I write my script, my Python application, and I want to run that Python application in this EC2 instance I'm creating. And that Python application, what it's supposed to do is, it's supposed to contact IAM and create a user called Alpha, right? That's all the application does. It goes, each time someone hits the application, it creates a user called Alpha. Guess what? That application is going to fail. Why? Because it doesn't have the right, the EC2 instance doesn't have the right permission to contact IAM role, right? So now what I'll do is I'll create a role for that instance that gives it access to IAM role and attach it to that instance. So now my Python application will be able to inherit that role and be able to do what it needs to do with IAM role. So now that's the concept. So yeah, that being said, I've attached a role here, and I'm going to go ahead and.
So one question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So is there, can you go back and change after you configure your instance? Can you go back and change that role?
Yeah, I'll show you exactly how you do that.
All right.
So yeah, let's go ahead and launch. And I'm using the same key pair I've been using since the first day of class. And remember, your key pair is so that you can be able to go into that instance to troubleshoot. Earlier today, this morning, when I woke up and I was trying to prepare for this project, not prepare, but write the code that I need for this project and just make sure that it works. I was facing so many errors with my user data, right? It wasn't working as expected. So the user data I'm going to send to you, I'm pretty much 99.9% sure it works. Why? Because I used my SSH key when it's that EC2 that I created and ran those step by step. I was troubleshooting the errors that I was facing. So that's why you need a keeper. So you can, if you don't face errors, you can go in there and try to fix those errors. So I'm going to go ahead and launch. And remember, this instance we're seeing here that I'm launching, this is where we're going to launch our application. So it's going to take a while for it to launch. So you see it's pending. So I'm just going to put a name here just so we're not confused, because this can get confusing, right? I'm going to put demo so we know exactly what instance we're running with. So yeah, so remember this instance you're seeing here, the one that I just created is still going to create. This one that's creating the demo, this is where our application will run on, right? It's initializing. So I'm assuming the user data is working right now. It's trying to set up the application the way we want it. That being said, the next part of our project is, let me go back. Now we created our server where our application will be running, right? We created our EC2 instance, we created our EKS cluster, we created our ECS cluster. Whatever you're going to run your application on, we've just created it. So now we have to focus on the application itself, right? How we're going to deploy our application. So the first step now will be to have our code, right? Build our code and put it in a code repository like GitHub, right? That will be the first step. So this is what we're going to do now. What we're trying to do now is, me as a developer, I'm going to create a code commit, and I'm going to push the code that we just talked about into our code commit. So that will be the next step while our EC2 instance is launching. So let's go now and create our code commit. And I'm assuming that, guys, this should be pretty easy, this code commit, just because we've done GitHub, right? So it's basically the same thing. The only difference is instead of you pushing to GitHub, you're pushing to AWS. That's the only difference. So now I'm going to create my repository. Remember, creating this repository is the same as going to GitHub and creating a repository. That's what I'm doing. So I'm going to call this, let me find a code that we're going to use for entire pipeline. Let me see what I'm going to call this repository. I'm going to call it AWS demo. AWS demo. So I created my repo. So remember, creating this repo to me is the same as going on GitHub and creating a repository. Keep that in mind. So we just created our AWS/GitHub repository, whatever I want to call it. They all do the same thing. And now, what do I want to do? It's going to be obviously it's going to be an empty repository because there's no code in it, right? It's going to be an empty repository. So we need to put code in it that we're going to use. So you see, AWS makes things so easy. Once you create your repo, it even tells you that this is how you clone it, right? Git clone. Git clone. But for me, I want to use my IDE, just because it'll be easier for me to work with and it'll be easier for you guys to visualize me working with it. So instead of using git clone, I'm going to clone using my IDE. And when I say IDE, this is what I mean. And I know we all downloaded this. So I'm going to create a new window in my IDE. Just because I love working my IDE, I think it's easier to work with. So I'm going to clone it using my IDE. It's very easy. Clone, and then I just put my repo in there, and I'm going to clone my repo. Just like you clone any other GitHub repository. Remember, guys, this is the same as cloning any GitHub repository. Yeah, it's just because it's called AWS code commit, it doesn't change the fact that it's just a GitHub repository. Keep that in mind. So I've cloned my repository, and as you can see, my repository is completely empty. It's completely empty, but I need code. I need my code in here, the code I'm going to push. So what do I need now? I like to work with the terminal. So when I want to push, I'm going to open my terminal. But in the meantime, I need to bring the code that I need to use in here. So I'm going to find that code that we talked about previously. Where is it? Let's see. Is it this one? I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this code. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy it. I'll copy the entire code. Copy. And I'm just going to come back to our AWS repository, and I'm trying to paste that code. I'll do this sometime just so I can have something to work with. Oops, did you copy? copy, paste. I'm talking about it and save it. So now, guess what? Pasting this code is like telling GitHub that, yeah, I just authored this code pretty much. You know, I just wrote this new code, this set of code. These are new web, these are walmart.com that I just wrote together, and I want to push it to my repository. So as just to make sure that you're in your GitHub repository, you see Git status, and it tells me that, oh, you have 5 files that you haven't even added to your staging environment yet. Remember, we studied this. So I'm going to go ahead and run our git add to add it to our staging. That's git add, and when I hit git status, you see now everything is getting tracked, right? And then I'm going to commit it. Remember, there's git commit and there's git push. But because I'm a lazy engineer, I'm just going to use the command that is going to. This is what I would have used previously to commit, to add and commit. But I already added it, just so I wanted to go step. But next time, if you want to add and commit at the same time, you just use -am. But since I already added, I'm just going to use -am. I'm going to say committing my fake walmart.com, pretty much. And I committed it. So it's committed, and then I'm going to push it to AWS. And there it is. So when I come back, it's already been pushed. So I'll come back to my repo. This is my repo, and you see my code here. So I already pushed my code here. And remember, you can even make changes on here, even though I discourage making changes on the UI. But if I wanted to change something here real quick, this is what I'll change it. But this code you see here, our code, this is it now. I already pushed it to AWS. So we already done our first part of our project, which is to push it to our repository. So the next step now will be to use code build, the code build that is going to build that project. So let's go back to that EC2 and make sure that our EC2 is running. And another thing I want to show you is, remember when I choose to enable a public IP, this is what I meant. If I come here, I want to make sure that the web server that we installed using user data is running. So I put it here, and you see, our user data, our Apache is running. But the expectation now is when I build my CI/CD pipeline and I build, it's going to replace this page with this HTML code, right? With this our new Valentine's.com feature that we're trying to introduce. So when I finish with my CI/CD pipeline, what I'm expecting is I want to see my new Valentine's in this new web page here where consumers can consume it. So I just made a new change, and I want to see here when the whole pipeline is complete. So this is our application running now. But yeah, this is what we're trying to deploy to this application that's running in our EC2 instance.
Yo, I have a question.
Yep.
So this Apache page, is that like the default page?
Yep, this is the default page.
All right.
This is the default page. So this is how you can quickly confirm that, okay, Apache is actually working, right? If you don't have this default page, then you know that there's something wrong with your Apache.
Can you go back to how you pulled this up? Just run that one more time, please.
Yeah, I just came to my EC2 and I just took this DNS right here. And I just put it in my browser, that's all.
All right, but
yeah, look. That's why you want to enable, you see. When we deploy our application, the expectation is that we're going to put that DNS and we're going to see our new application here, right? So that being said, let me show, I know Alpha mentioned, how can you change the instance profile, right? So you come here, if I wanted to change it, if let's say there was another application that tried to run on this instance and it was having permissions denied, and I went and I realized that the role that I provided to it doesn't have the right permission, right? You can just add the permissions to that role. But let's just assume that you realize that this EC2 instance doesn't have the right role at all, and you needed to create a new one and attach it to it. You create a new role and you want to attach to it. You come, you click on it, right? You come here, you have to go to actions, you go to settings. And then you're going to see here that, oh, it looks like they moved it. Oh yeah, usually when you come here, you see it, but if they moved it, I know where they moved it to. If they moved it, they probably moved it to maybe security or networking, because, So let's see, let's check if it's in networking. It's not in networking, so it should be in security. Yeah, there you go. So you see, modify. So now this is where you come, you say modify, and see, this is the old role that we put. You can just replace it with your new role. So that's how you do it. Yeah, so anyway, that being said, that could make you look really good at work at one point, especially when you solve issues like this, because this is you cannot know what's going on unless you understand IAM rules and also understand the internals of EC2 instances. And this is the thing that you can't just go online and read on EC2 and pick things like this up. It comes from experience. So the information I'm telling you about the instance role, how instances can have their own roles and be able to launch application and talk. These are things that you learn from experience. So I'm feeding you all the experience and I'm giving you all the little tricks, because trust me, at some point at work, you need to provide your EC2 instance or whatever you're working with, some kind of role, and you have that in the back of your head. That being said, we have our EC2 running, we have our code here. So the next step now is to create our next step of our pipeline, which is going to be code build. So let's see, I'll duplicate this just because I want to keep everything open, and I'll go to code build. And then I'll see if I can start a project with code build. So I'll create a project with code build. And what are we going to name? We're just going to keep using the same name, AWS demo. And you see where it says source, right? You could choose GitHub, right? If I had my code in GitHub, I would choose GitHub. So you could still do this project without even using code commit. When I send you when I post that that code in my GitHub, you can just come here, use GitHub, and then you can just connect your GitHub and just use that code directly from your GitHub. But you're going to need to obviously create your personal access token, which is easy to do. You can Google how to do that and then authenticate with GitHub. But now we're using a code commit, so that's easy. It's already in AWS, so you don't need any special kind of authentication, right? I'm saying that what I want you to build, the source is going to come from code commit. Remember, do you notice this? S3. You can also use S3 as a source. That's something that you should keep in mind. And the way that you could use S3 as your source is you could store a static application in S3, pull that static application in S3 and deploy it to someone. You could store your code in S3, pull and deploy. You could store your CloudFormation template in S3, use code build to build it and deploy. So yeah, so there's so many possibilities. When you start playing with this, you see this. So you can use S3, but we're using code commit as our source. It's repository. Remember, the new repository we created was AWS demo. Branch. You could use a branch and you could use a tag, you could use a commit ID, but we're just going to use our main branch, which is our master branch. So yeah, automatically, so we set up our GitHub, and this is how you attach your GitHub or your whatever your company is using, most likely GitHub or Bitbucket, whatever. This is how you attach it to your pipeline. So what I'm saying is, code build, I want you to make sure that when something happens when a change is pushed to our repository, which is code commit, I want you to automatically build it. So this is how you start building your pipeline. Pull it from master. Now it's going to ask you, you're going to use manage, and I'm going to use Amazon Linux. You see, you can also use Windows or Ubuntu. Runtime, I'm just going to use a standard runtime. And the image, I'm just going to use standard. So this, I'm just using standard or standard. Service role, this is another important concept. Everything on AWS, it needs a role. Everything in AWS needs a role. So you can create that role individually and then use it here, right? Or you could just create your own role, or you could just have them create that role for you. So for the sake of this class, I'm just going to let them create a role for me that will be able to let me build. And this is just advanced, like you can make sure you put timeouts and things like that. So remember, this is where you can insert your own commands to build. So you can basically insert commands here, your bash scripts here, your shell script commands here. But I'm using that build spec.yaml file, this file. I'm telling you that when you go to AWS code commit, you're going to see a file in that repository called build spec.yaml. That's what I want you to use. So once you choose build spec, automatically build spec already knows to look in that repository and pick up that build spec or YAML. So artifacts, no artifacts, but usually you can store your artifacts in S3 and just pick them up. So artifacts is that, so what artifacts are your build code. So when you go to an interview and you're talking about, oh, I just did a build and I deployed it, you want to use the word artifact. So I'm going to deploy my artifacts. It's just a fancy way. When I started being DevOps, it was kind of a weird word to use, artifact. But you always want to feel in the game. So when you're talking to someone and they say, oh, did you do that? How did you do that build? It's like, oh, I built my code, and then when the artifact was created, I deployed the artifact. Once you start using those kind of words, artifact, they say, oh man, this guy knows what he's doing. So yeah, we call your finished build, your finished package, we call them artifacts. And then in CloudWatch, you want CloudWatch log. So this is our code build and create code build. So we created our second part of our pipeline, which is our build. One thing I want you to keep in mind is you can do multiple builds, and you can do multiple builds. So you see, you can create another build project, which is just to do a test on your code, right? You can create another one, which is just your testing. You can create another code build project, which is just your validation, and they can connect all those together using pipeline, which you're going to see how I'm going to do that. So let's see, what time is it? It's 7:15. So we might another 15 minutes, and we can go for a quick break. But yeah, so we're actually making progress. We're here now. We already finished now. We finished with our code build. So we created our code repository. We put our walmart.com code in there. Now we created our code build to build our walmart.com. This is where we are right now. So now the next step will be to do our code deploy. So we're going to add this last step you see down here, which is to deploy our code to our EC2 instance that we just created. So that will be the last and final step. So let's see. So now we have our code build. If you come to code build, you come to projects. We're going to see our project that we built, AWS demo. We've never run it yet, but this is it right here. So our next step now will be to do code deploy. This is the guy that's going to deploy. This is the third part of our pipeline, which is going to deploy our application. So this is going to be a lot different from code build, just because code deploy does a lot more. It picks up this artifacts, whatever it is, and it deploys it to your application. So it does a little bit more. Code build just takes it from GitHub and builds it, but this guy actually takes the entire artifact and pushes it to your application, wherever your application might be. Mumbai, Frankfurt, Virginia, it doesn't matter, right? You just need to tell code build where that it is, and it's going to do it for you. It's going to deploy it. So I'm going to give it the same name, AWS demo, and compute platform. I'm just going to say we're deploying on EC2. Do you see here that this is where you can choose that, okay, I'm deploying to ECS. And if you're deploying to ECS, it means that your code build is going to build you your Docker image, right? Let me explain that again. If you choose that you're deploying to ECS, it means in your code build, you're going to have a bunch of commands like Docker build, Docker tag, and Docker push, right? That's what you're going to have in your command. What we did earlier in class to push our code. That's what you're going to have in your build. And then now code deploy now is going to come and then deploy to ECS by pulling that same image that you just use code build to deploy to ECS. So it's that easy. Build, put in ECR, code deploy, pick that image and deploy to your ECR. It's that simple, guys. You see, so it's that simple. So anyways, we're going to deploy to our EC2. And we're going to create our code build application. Now that we have our code build application, this now is useless in itself. We have our code build application, but how is code build going to know where to deploy, right? Or what to deploy to? So now that's why when we come in here, after we do our code build, anyway, I'm going to stop here in case, does anyone have any questions? Is everything, are you guys following along at least?
Yes, sir. I'm following.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember, I'm explaining along the way. When you watch the video, it will make a lot more sense. But once we're done with this project, I promise you, you will not be surprised at what DevOps is or what DevOps does. You'll be fully in the mix where you can actually, in an interview, you can actually back, what DevOps does or what the CI/CD pipeline actually does. Because this is the whatever we're doing today, you can use and apply to any real life project. That being said, we've created our code deploy, but now we need to tell code deploy that where to deploy to, right? So this is now you come here and say, no, I want a deployment group. And our deployment group, remember, our deployment group is going to be done to those. Remember when we created those tags, right? Now we're going to use our deployment group and group our deployment by those tags, pretty much. So let's go in there and see how that works. So name, I'm just going to name it the same name, AWS demo. Remember, everything on code deployed needs a role. So if you come here and you don't see any role, what you're going to do is, if you come here and you search, you don't see any role. I already have a role because I created this role. But let's say, for example, you came here and you didn't see any role. You're going to go back to AWS IAM. I don't want to duplicate this page, it doesn't make any sense. But you're going to come here and you're going to say, okay, I don't have any role for code deploy, but code deploy needs a role here, the service role. So I'll come here, I'll go to roles. Here, I'll say, okay, I want to create a role for code deploy. So I'll go create role, and you're going to say, okay, yeah, this is a service role, it's my AWS service. And then you're going to say next. Oh yeah, and then you can say, yeah, this is the common use cases. Obviously, our use case is to deploy to EC2, but you see there's code deploy here. So you can say, okay, our use cases, we're trying to use it for code deploy. We're trying to allow code deploy, see, to call AWS services on our behalf. And then you're going to go next. You see, automatically it already creates a role. That's why I told you guys, you don't need to know how to write JSON for roles. You automatically create a role. So you see, it's giving you all these permissions to do different things. But essentially, we also want code deploy to be able to deploy to EC2 because that's what we're doing. And then you hit next, and then you just create your role name, and that's it. Once you finish creating a role name, and then now you're just gonna come here, and then you're gonna supply that role that you just created to this service role here. Okay, I hope, I'm not going to create a role because I already have a role, but that's how you do it. And then this is, remember yesterday I was telling you guys about blue-green deployment and things like that. I'm just going to choose in place deployment. But if I choose blue-green, it's going to create a completely different environment. Make sure that environment is running and it's going to deploy to the environment. Make sure it's running and then it's going to do a DNS swap. So this is a good concept. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So this is blue-green. I have my EC2 that have my Walmart.com code on it. And then I have another instance here that is the one that I'm trying to test. It's a new web page that has valentines.com on this side. So when I finish building this, if I want to do blue-green, what happens is they're going to create a completely new EC2 with our new application here. It's going to deploy it, test it, make sure it's running. Once it's running, it's going to now swap the Walmart.com DNS and say instead of Walmart.com to point to the old, I want to now start pointing to the new and serving the new. And then you have an old environment that now becomes the blue. So that's a very important concept. So that's exactly what will happen. But remember, the thing about blue-green is there's two environments, there's a blue and there's green environment, and always. The blue becomes the green and the green becomes the blue. Only after validation. Only after you make sure that, the Valentine's gift that we have on our webpage works as expected, the website works as expected, and then you do a DNS swap. And trust me, this will be done automatically. You won't have to do it. You set the blue-green and the machine will do it for you once it's ready. But we're just going to do in place just because we have one application, one web server to deploy to. And it's going to ask you that where do you want to deploy to? If you notice that you can do a combination of someone's or Badger. I think Badger can allow us connection. So you see, you can deploy to an auto-scaling group. You can deploy to on-premise, which is going to be instances that are not located in AWS. You can also do that, right? This is another important concept. There's companies that use AWS, but they also have their own data centers out of AWS. You know how easy it is to deploy it to an outside environment? You install your code deploy agent, and you authenticate that agent. That's it. If you have code deploy in your on-premise, for example, I can have this server you see that I'm using to do the class. If I install code deploy on this server that you see here and authenticate with AWS, I'll be able to deploy to my machine. So that's what on-premise means. So yeah, you can also deploy, but what we want to do is remember, I want to deploy to EC2. And this is where we're going to look for our key, right? Our tag, env, def, right? Remember when we did this tag? Yeah, if there were 20 instances, so if I go now, so after creating this, if I go back and created 2 more instances and tag them as env def, and then another deployment runs, it's going to deploy to those new instances automatically, right? Without you even coming in and adding them. So that's why tagging is so important. So we're deploying to the environment that has a tag equals def. No, we don't have any on-prem. So I'm just going to take that off. And the code deploy agent, now our schedule, I'm just going to leave that. Remember, we already deployed code deploy agent. So he's saying that, AWS System Manager, but I don't have System Manager installed on my machine. System Manager is just a whole nother ballgame. It's not all that important, but that's another thing that could automatically employ a code deploy agent. So I'm just going to put never, just because I already have my code deploy agent already in my machine. So then what else we have? Deploy all at once. You can use one at a time. So basically, one at a time is exactly what it is. You deploy to server A. When it's done, you deploy to server B. When it's done, you deploy to server C. But fortunately for us, we only have one server. So that's what one at a time does. Half at a time means if you have 10 servers, it's going to divide those 10 servers into 2 groups or 5. It's going to deploy to the first 5. When that one is up and running, then it will finish the rest of the 5. And then all at once, automatically, exactly what it is. You will deploy, you just bring them down. If you have 10 servers, you bring down all of them, you deploy to all 10 of them at once. And this might be disastrous because it might interrupt your application, right? So one at a time will be a smarter option just because you're still going to have, if you had 4 instances running, it means that if you deploy one at a time, it means once you deploy to one, you still have 3 working instances that your consumers can consume. So this one at a time will be a smarter bet if you were designing, if you're an architect, designing this pipeline for your company. And then load balancer, since we're going to use the public DNS like this, since I'm going to use the public DNS, I don't need a load balancer. But if I didn't want to use this public DNS and I had a whole bunch of instances that were scalable, then I'll have a load balancer that's going to balance this load between those instances. Remember, we studied load balancing. I didn't take any shortcuts when I was teaching these classes because I knew that I would come across things like this. And because we studied load balancer, I know exactly what a load balancer does. But yeah, I don't need any load balancer because I'm just going to use the public DNS. So I'm going to create, now we have our code deploy and we have our deployment group. So, so that is set now. And if you are curious, we could take a break. And then after our break, I'm going to use code pipeline to tie everything together, and then we're going to run and see if our pipeline succeeds, okay? So now I'm just going to take a 50, well, let's just see, a 12 minutes break.
I think we should just continue. I don't know about others, but
I know it's fun.
not fun, but I'm beginning to understand. So I don't know about others, but
so what do you? So yeah, you guys want to continue, or we could just make it a quick 10 minutes break.
I'm fine either way.
Well, if it seems like people are interested to continue, so let's go. So now we finished. Remember, let me go back to that. Let me go back to this chart. Remember, we started with our code commit, which we tested our code and we pushed it into our repository. The next step was to create our build, which is going to build our code and make sure that our code is ready to be deployed. And then the next one was this one we just finished, which is our code deploy. So we created a code commit, code build, deploy, which is going to deploy to our EC2. So we created our code deploy. We created a deployment group, which was grouped by tags. And the tag was pointing to our EC tool, which we created earlier, remember? So this is it. So next step now, and the final step will be our code pipeline that's going to put the entire thing together, right? So now we're going to put everything together to be what we call the CI/CD pipeline. You know, what the DevOps do with pipeline. I always talk about building pipelines and stuff. Now we're going to see how a pipeline actually looks. So let's see. So now our next step is going to be our pipeline. Create a pipeline. And remember, our pipeline, I'm just going to keep using the same name just so we're very consistent. Every pipeline needs a role, right? I always told you that everything in AWS needs a role. If that wasn't the case, it means anybody would do anything, right? Code deploy will just go in there and destroy it. So yeah, so it's very important to have everything to have a role so that you can control, you can fine grain that role and say, okay, code deploy, you can only access EC2. I don't want you to be able to access ECS. So in the future, you're not surprised to hear that, oh, code deploy to ECS instead of EC2. No, you cannot because you don't have the permissions. So that's why roles are so important. So you see, I already have a role that I created, but again, to create a role, you follow the same step that I showed you earlier to create a role. But now you'll be creating a role for pipeline. So I already have one here, so I'm just going to use it. And you have some, you see, you have some advanced settings here, like you can even customize your location, you can encrypt and stuff like that. But it's always good to poke around. And now the next step now is, now I'm going to start piecing my pipeline together, right? And the first part of my pipeline will be obviously my code, my Git, my code commit, my code. So now I'm going to attach and say, okay, now I want the first part of my pipeline to come from my repository, my code. My first part will come from my code, and my repository name is AWS, and my branch should be the master branch, right? That's the first part of our code pipeline. And this is another option, right? I could say, this is how you can start doing automated deployments. I'll say, okay, I want code pipeline to periodically check for changes. And then if there's a new change, if a developer pushes a new change, right? I want it to build. But then the best option will always be to use your CloudWatch event, right? So when someone automatically pushes to master, right? If I made a change to our code and I pushed it, CloudWatch events will automatically trigger my pipeline. So this is how you start talking about, you know, companies doing 5,000 deployments a day, like Netflix. Netflix does a few hundred to 1,000 deployments a day. Why? Because each developer from across the world will work, push, and automatically something like this triggers and starts the pipeline, builds, tests, everything works, push it to production, another developer on the other end, and everything is fast. That's why you see they pay DevOps a lot of money, because this kind of functionality was not here a few years ago. It used to take months to make a simple change, but now companies like Netflix are making thousands of changes in one day. That's DevOps. That's why I'm telling you, DevOps is never going to go anywhere, guys. If you do your engine today, even if you don't get a job today, even if you don't get a job tomorrow, you're going to get a job. Why? Because DevOps is always going to be here. And now that you really understand the concept, it makes your life even easier. Because think about it, who doesn't want to make changes every second? Who doesn't want? Netflix can have new movies coming and out, new movies every second of the day. Why? Because they have pipelines like this that they really build. So that being said, we use CloudWatch events, and CloudWatch events is going to monitor this code. Each time I make a new change, it's going to trigger my pipeline. So hopefully we're going to be able to test to see how that works. And then there's another, you see, this is where our artifacts go, called default artifacts. So this is our first stage of our pipeline. The second stage is going to be build stage. And remember, we use code deploy to build, right? So all I have to do is point to my code deploy build. So I'm connecting my code deploy build here. You see where you can add Jenkins? So you can use Jenkins to build, right? So you can integrate Jenkins into your pipeline, but we're just going to use code build. The project name is right here. And I want a single build. Batch build means you build the first batch, and then build the second, and then build the third. But we're just going to do everything in full in our AWS demo. So this is our build stage. And remember, you can build multiple build stages. See, this is optional. I can have multiple build stages. This stage builds, this stage tests, which is another build stage. This stage validates, which is another build stage, and then we can go to our deploy. So you're not just restricted to just one stage. But in our case, we only need one stage. And there is another stage, our deploy stage. And we're going to connect our code deploy that we just created to our deploy stage, right? our deploy provider, what is it? It's called deploy. I want you to also see that you can use CloudFormation to deploy. You can use Elastic Beanstalk. So AWS will integrate with each other. You can use ECS. You can use S3. So we're going to use our code deploy that we just built. It's called AWS demo. And remember, we created a deployment group. Our deployment group is called AWS demo. So next, you see, now it's time to put everything together. We have our first stage of our pipeline, second stage of our pipeline, third stage of our pipeline, the build stage, source stage, and then our deploy stage. So we're going to create our pipeline. And we should see everything streamlined. You see now, you see our pipeline, our first step of our pipeline, our second step of our pipeline, our step. You can have multiple steps in this pipeline. You can have 20 steps if you wanted to. I can add another step here. I can add another step here. And I can, you see, automatically triggered, right? As soon as I build my pipeline, it automatically detect that, oh, we have a code in our code deploy. So automatically trigger that code, right? You see, the first stage, the first pipeline stage already done. It's build our code. Now it's sourced our code pretty much. So it's pulled our code from our repository. That's what this stage does. And then the next stage now is our build stage. It's building our code now. So you see, it's in progress. Once it finishes building our code, it's automatically going to deploy to our infrastructure. You see, I'm not doing anything, guys. You know, I have my hands in the air. My pipeline is doing the work for me. So we're just going to follow along and see how it's doing this work by itself. It's doing the heavy lifting. So now this is our build stage. So we'll see how it works. Once it builds, I want you to deploy to those instances. So there we go. So let that. So while that's running, you know, this is a, you know, it's a beautiful diagram. This is a pipeline. You can have step upon step upon step upon step in this pipeline, and they're all going to be automated steps. So hopefully we have a successful build. We can go back. Hopefully when it's all done, instead of seeing this, we're going to see this application. We're going to see this web page here, because this is the code that we just built and we're trying to deploy. So I'm hoping that, fingers crossed, that we have our successful build. So let's, in the meantime, while it's building, I'll be welcoming some questions, guys. Any question? There's no dumb question. We'll see our build has succeeded. So now I'll deploy. This is the last stage, and we're hoping our deployment succeeds. So now that, since there's no question, I'm just going to add more details and just give you guys more knowledge based on my experience. So you see this stage here. Normally, if something like this fails, you want to set up a notification, right? To notify you immediately. See, our deployment succeeded, right? Our deployment, so it sourced our code, it built our code, and it succeeded. So let's see, let's refresh this. You see that? Guys, it deployed our code. Our walmart.com is live, guys. Can we give a round of applause for our deployment?
Yes, sir.
Our code is our walmart.com. Our new Valentine's is live. So now consumers can go in there and shop Valentine's and we can make money. Guys, we didn't do anything. The pipeline did it for us. So that's the first step. So I think we should take that break. When we come back, we can add a few things to our pipeline. I can make a change to our code and push it and see how our pipeline is going to deploy that change to us, for us, right? Just like Netflix will be doing it, just like any other company will be doing it. So guys, that's it. We have our code live. Our HTML code has been deployed live. So let's take a break. 10 minutes break, we come back, and then we'll build up what we're working, guys. When you go to an interview, guys, you said, you already know what's going on. You can, if someone says, talk about a real life project that you did, you can just think about what we did in class and you can be able to add whatever you need to add to it. But this is basically what the pipeline does. So I'll see you all in 10 minutes.
Yo, one question real quick before we go. So essentially this DevOps thing is like about building website, like web pages, but doing it effectively, or is there other applications that like you work?
Remember yesterday we talked about, when we talk about application, we talked about the Twitter application, right? Front end, middle end, and the back end, which are databases, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about deployment, you're not deploying to your database because your database, your data always stays the same. occasionally your deployment might do something we call database migration, right? Which means that if your web page is supposed to add a new feature to a database, you want to update that database to be able to have the field that you need, right? To deploy that, yeah. So you do occasionally a DB migration. But other than that, you won't have to make any change to the database, just do a deploy, and it's going to essentially deploy everything, your front end, your back end, your Ruby code, whatever code you're writing, right? It's going to be the same build process, right? The only difference is, for example, if it's Ruby, you're going to use something like yarn install and all that kind of stuff. But the concept is the same, guys. You're making a change to your code base and you're building it. You see the build stage that we just used? That's where you will be able to build any kind of code that you have, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially.
I got you.
Yeah, man, I'll see you all in 10 minutes. Let's build on this pipeline and then go from there. Hello, class. Are we back?
Yep.
Okay. So now, my name is Yuri. I'm an engineer. I'm working in. I'm Yuri from Krasnodar in Russia, and I work for our company. And let's say I was working on our code base, and I'm a developer. So the goal was, instead of saying learning it, labbing it, and leveling up, someone in the company, remember I'm using hypothetical examples, but essentially what happens in the company in a bigger scheme of things. Someone came to me from business and said, well, Yuri, instead of, having learning it, labbing it, and leveling it up, which in a Walmart.com, it could be, instead of having, the product page or the Rice Krispie treats or the snacks on the front page, I want you to change that front page picture or description. I want you instead now to post Valentine's because one of Valentine's Day is coming. So I want you to change that in our code base and put Valentine's Day. So Yuri is going to put that code. He's going to do his changes, whatever is in Ruby, Java, whatever. He's going to say, okay, it's going to change the front page to Valentine's Day. He's going to do his change, right? Yuri is going to do his change, and he's going to, when he's done, he's going to save that change, and he's going to, obviously, he's going to add that change, and he's going to commit that change to the company's or the organization's Git repository. So what Yuri is trying to do is he's trying to change the Rice Krispie Treats product page. He's trying to change that to a Valentine's Day image, right? So he's done the work, and now he's going to push it to my pipeline that I built, and my pipeline is going to build that code. If there's any test cases, it's going to run against that code to make sure that the code is running as expected. Keep in mind, there's always test cases. And if it passes the test cases, it's going to deploy on Walmart.com, which means that if he passes his test within seconds or within minutes, the front Rice Krispie trees that were on the Walmart should have changed to Valentine's.com. So that's what Yuri is trying to achieve. So changing Rice Krispies to Valentine's. And Yuri is going to add and commit that code. Oops, am I missing something? Oh, I missed git add. Oops. Anyway, it looks like I'm not using that command right, so I'm just going to use it the old school way. But yeah, I'll definitely check why that command is not running. I'm going to git add and then git commit. Changing Rice Krispies to Valentine's. That's what Yuri has been working on. And then Yuri is going to, when he's done, he's going to push that change, right? The expectation for every pipeline in AWS or anywhere is, or any company, they expect that once they make that change, it's going to automatically trigger that pipeline. Do you see? I made that change, it's automatically, so the goal is when it succeeds, this Rice Krispie treat should change to Valentine's. So that's why Yuri has been working for in Russia, and he's pushed it in. As soon as he pushed it into GitHub, he automatically triggered our pipeline. He sourced our code, he builds our code, and he's going to deploy our code. So that's essentially what DevOps is. The pipeline is. You want to have quick turnovers, quick changes, quick builds, quick deploys. So that whenever I do a future change like what I just did, I want my customers to be able to see it within minutes or seconds, right? In this case, the entire pipeline takes about maybe 1 minute to run, right? I want to see my change out there within minutes. Within 1 minute, I want to see that new Valentine's Day so people can start buying, so we can make more money. When it's Christmas Day, you might be working on maybe changing the website to start selling Christmas stuff. So I want to have that change there ASAP so customers can start shopping Christmas stuff. So they source our code, it's build our code, and now it's deploying our code. So as soon as it completes deploy, I'm going to go here. And what I expect is our Rice Krispie treats should change to our Valentine's Day page. So that's our goal. So it's deploying right now. So we just wait for it to finish. And one thing you need to keep in mind is I didn't do anything. It automatically detected that new change. And as soon as it automatically detected that new change, it automatically built and deployed. So now I'm sitting at home and I'm just crossing my legs and I'm just chilling and the machine is doing everything for me. I didn't have to do anything. So now you can have hundreds of developers across the world building, pushing in code, and it's automatically building and deploying it to the main website. That's why they pay DevOps so much. So it's deployed. So let's come to our see if we can find our Valentine's Day page. Do you see? So now I thought it was I made change here, but it looks like I made change on this line. So this is our new change within our main website, guys. So bam, that's DevOps. So DevOps is all about accelerating change and doing it so fast and so efficiently that no other engineer or no other sector in the IT industry can keep up. So what we're seeing here, this is a low level, but it's the same. I want you to understand the same concept. This is what companies are trying to achieve. And this is what the pipeline is trying to achieve. Quick deployments, turnover deployments, automation, so you don't have to do any manual work. See, any change that I do to this code, right? If I came here and I change this HTML to a huge, okay, let me see, for example, let's see a huge, let me just go online and let me just look for any other HTML code. Let me look for any other HTML code out there, guys. Any other HTML code. Let me see if I can find HTML samples. I'm just trying to show you, that DevOps,
You can just right click on any page under the view source code.
Let's see. I don't know if you can do that with Walmart.com though, but I'll try.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you can see the source code, by clicking, but the question is, will we be able to, determine the contents, be able to display those contents? So it's in settings and is it in settings? I know you can display that by
view page source.
View page source. Yeah, there it is, source code. You see, that's why I tell you, like Walmart, it's going to be a little bit complicated. This is a source code for Walmart. You see all these links?
I think Amazon may work better, I think.
Let's try. View page source. So we have all this HTML, guys. We have this HTML. So I'm just going to go ahead and see if I could, because some of the time, you need, most of it is not just HTML, but it's also written in CSS and all that stuff, right? So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this HTML from Amazon.com. And I'm going to see if we can be able to display that web page. But you have to remember that this is a dynamic web page, so it might not work for what we're trying to do. But I just want to show you how you can easily make any kind of changes you want on your website, and you can easily be able to trigger that change, and you're going to see it live. So that's exactly what this class is for. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to push it and see what we get. So again, this is all the developer has to do. I'm the developer. I pushed in my new index.html. And I don't care what is going on. That is a DevOps business. what happens to this page or how it gets deployed, right? According to the developer, he did his job. He wrote his code. So now it's up to you to do the deployment. So what I'm expecting is when I come here, I should see a new pipeline already being triggered, right? Because I push. So this is it. You see, he already saw the code and it's already building. Let me close. He's already building. He's going to build and it's going to deploy. Now, whether or not it's going to be able to deploy the same web page as Amazon, it's another story. But I think it's going to answer a lot of questions for us. So that's building. When that's done, or when that change is done, we're going to come and see how we can add a step to our pipeline to make sure that we can have a notification each time we need to deploy. Because those are the normal things that you do on a daily basis. Sometimes you want notification. All right. We want a notification. You want people to know when deployment is being done. You want a manual approval. So instead of me just automatically doing all the way to production, I want someone to come and look at the code and look at the test page and then click deploy, and then it's going to deploy to production. So you can have some little bit of control of what goes to your production. So it's building, and then it should deploy. Yeah, I would have thought that this would do things faster. Well, yeah, that's just my expectations as a DevOps engineer. Back in the day, things like this would take months because, like I said, you have to bring everything down, but now DevOps engineers, they make these things happen now within minutes. Look, we're making a change and it's going live in minutes, and we can, and trust me, there could be multiple pipelines running. If I go now and push another code, while this pipeline is running, it's going to start another pipeline concurrently. So it's not just one that can run at once. You could run multiple pipelines running concurrently. So this is what I mean by CI/CD pipeline. When we get to Jenkins, now you already know what the CI/CD pipeline does. So when we start trying to build with Jenkins, you see exactly the same concept. It will be so much easier for you to understand Jenkins. So yeah, it looks like it's taking a long time to build. Looks like our Amazon.com is a huge code base that is building.
As a DevOps engineer, are you all of this automation that you're doing? Is it enabled by AWS, or if you do not have AWS, what else would you be using?
We have AWS. You have to build your own data center.
Oh wow! So AWS is just like the middleman that facilitates your day-to-day operations.
Yes, AWS. Remember when we were studying AWS, I said AWS provides you infrastructure as a code.
Mm-hmm.
It provides you platform as a code, and it provides you service as a code, right? That's what AWS does pretty much. I mean, you can't really complicate it past that. So if you don't want any of that, you have to go build all of this by yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but no company do that. Trust me, all companies they use AWS and all that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason not to because it makes life easy, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. So our build is taking quite a while to build. Let's just be a little bit curious to see what's taking the build so long. But yeah, obviously that was a huge HTML. It's been 3 minutes. And this is how you can find grain, and you can look at logs while you're running. You can see what's going on. But you see, it's been queued. That's why. You know why? It's because with this, you see this project code build. The thing with code build is using images to build, right? And those images come from AWS. So sometimes, depending on what kind of account you have, it might take a while for AWS to have images available for you to use to build. Remember, this build that we're doing, we didn't create any server to use to build, right? We didn't create any server. So what's happening is AWS is supplying us with system that we're using to do our build. So you see, we're finally able to have a server ready. So you see the actual code takes seconds. It's just the availability of the server that wasted our time. So anyway, so it looks like that was succeeding. Let's deploy and let's see what it deploys to us. Now I'm curious to see what we see on this web page when it's done. It might not be any information, it might be a bunch of errors, or it might be, even Amazon, displaying this web page. So we'll see. Because like I told you before, all those links you see on that web page, they will link it to those images. And sometimes they might be public, sometimes it might be private. It just depends on how. So it's been deployed. So let's see what we're able to see here. You see? Guys, you see? It looks like we just created our own Amazon.com.
Basically, you just cloned the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
So what this is telling me is that you see these pictures you see on this website, all these links are all public links, right? They're all public links, maybe stored in S3 buckets, right? I can guarantee you that these links are all stored in S3 buckets. They're all public links. That's why my website was not just able to deploy it, but it was also able to pull these images so we can be able to consume. You see this?
Wow.
So now I can even go to this Amazon code now and make changes to it. And then you see those changes here in real life. You see these links? These are Amazon links. These are links. If you've done HTML, these links, these are just links that are linking. These are all the images, the image links. Href is all links. You see? So you can make any change on this web page and push it, and our code deploy for us. So you see, guys, we have our pipeline. So this is basically, you're already full-fledged DevOps engineers. We've just been able, the only difference now is you cannot go in there and like buy and sell. You know why?
Yeah, because it's not running on the server, like the main server.
Yes, so you don't have access to the databases.
The
You don't have
database.
access to the, Lambda function and all that stuff. So yeah, so you see. So this will be a good learning experience for you guys, just to know that whatever you see on the front end is just a page, right? Alpha, I know Alpha, you asked a similar question about this, right? Whatever you see on the front end is just a page. What actually takes you to signing is different microservices, right? Talking to each other. This is just a front end. You see? We were all lost. There's nothing, but we were able to deploy this front end. So yeah, guys, this is it. We just deployed Amazon's HTML web page. So okay, that being said, the hard thing about using Amazon to do tests is because changes cannot be easily seen. You see, I guarantee you this will be a separate microservice. I guarantee you this will be a separate microservice. Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Just say, so if you're a hacker, or let's say, an internet fraudster, you can just, clone this page and then create your own links on the back end. Let's say if someone comes to your page and wants to buy this, it takes them to your own link.
Yes, you can do that. The only difference, they're not going to trust it because you're not going to have access to Amazon.com.
Yeah.
Anyway, that being said, we've deployed our web page or our application, whatever you call it. So now let's do a little bit more to our pipeline. So now, obviously, this is where you can create notifications, right? Like, I want you to notify me when this happens, right? I want you to notify me when the pipeline succeeds. I want you to notify me when the pipeline starts. I want you to also notify me in case the pipeline fails, right? Those are important things that you need to have, because if your pipeline fails, you want to know. If it succeeds, you might want to know, right? And all that stuff. So this is where you come and you make those notifications, and you can say, I'll just keep naming them the same. And I'll create my notification. And then your target now is going to be, remember guys, when we created this SNS topic, right? I created this SNS topic 2 classes ago. Yes, the same SNS topic, the same SNS topic I'm going to use. So the idea here is each time my pipeline starts, each time it succeeds, each time it fails. In fact, anything that happens to my pipeline, I'm going to get an email about it, pretty much. So That being said, so yeah, so this is important, guys. You want to be on the loop about whatever is happening with your pipeline. You want to know everything that's going on. So this is what we'll do it for you. We're going to see that in a minute. But then another thing I want to show you that's very important is there's transitions. I can disable this transition and say, okay, when it sources and when it builds, I want you to stop here. So you disable the transition, right? So you have to come deploy manually, right? You can do that here. Another thing you can do is you can edit and say, okay, I want to add a stage, right? Remember I told you can add multiple build stages. You can add a stage to build. You can add a stage to test. You can add a stage to validate. This is where you add it, right? And so me, I'm going to add a stage, but the stage, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to call this stage SNS notification. So what I'm trying to do with this stage, the goal I'm trying to achieve with this stage is I want that whenever you finish building and you're ready to deploy, I want you to send me an email, right? I want you to send me an email telling me that, okay, this is what I want to, you see, so I'm going to call you the same name. I want to say, whenever you're ready to deploy, I want you to let me know, send me an email telling me that it's ready for deployment, come do the deployment. So you see, you can even send a URL for review. You can add comments, you can do anything you want, but I just wanted to let me know when you finish building so I can come and deploy it manually by myself instead of all this automated stuff because I don't trust it, you know what I mean? So let's set that to our pipeline because that's very important, guys. Notification is very important. So you see now, I have my first step, second step, and then there's this step that's going to stop and send me a notification telling me that, oh, your pipeline is ready. Once I come and I approve it, it's going to deploy it. So I'll just come back. Now we already deploy our HTML for Amazon.com. I'm just going to say, okay, let me go back to our simple web page that we did before. And I'm going to push that in. So what I'm expecting is I want to get an email telling me that the pipeline has started, right? I want an email telling me that the pipeline has started. So I'm going to open my Gmail real quick and see if I get my notification. Because as an engineer, man, you want to sit in your house and let the machine do everything for you. So what I'm expecting is that I want an email telling me that, the pipeline has succeeded, has failed, oh, they charged my account, bastard. So yeah, so this our page is going to change. So let's see, let's go back to our code pipeline, right? You see, it already sourced it and it's already building it. Yeah, this thing happens pretty quick. Once it finishes builds, it's going to send me a notification telling me that the build is ready. So, and then remember the notification was that if it fails or if it succeeds and things like that, it's going to let me know. So that's what I'm expecting right now. Let's see, all me. So let's see how our pipeline goes, guys. Let's see how our pipeline goes. Close this real quick. It's building, and in the meantime, any other question? This will be just the last part of this demo. And once this demo is done, I'll just go ahead and show you guys some other little tricks that you need to know. No one is going to teach you, but you need to know. And then we can go on our way. So, but like I said, this project you just did today, you can use it in any interview. It's going to open your eyes to how DevOps and CI/CD, what DevOps has really been paid all that money for, what we're trying to achieve, speed, efficiency, acceleration, and everything you can think of. Automation, this is a pipeline working by itself without me doing anything. So these are the things that we're trying to achieve as a DevOps engineer. So this is a great project. Even the project we're going to do at the end of the class, it always has to revolve around CI/CD pipeline because that's what DevOps is. There's dev, there's ops. You're DevOps, so you're bringing the two teams together using a pipeline. And so that's what DevOps comes in. So anyway, so there we have our source code. It's building. This build takes so long just because we're using an image from AWS. And that image, we have to wait for that image to be available pretty much. But you can use build your own custom images and use that pretty much. And ideally, that's what I would do. Ideally, I would build my own custom image, keep it in ECR, in our repository, in our registry. And then I'll use my aspect.yaml file, my build-spec.yaml file to pull that image and use it to build my application pretty much. So for example, let me say, for example, you have your Java application. You're gonna build your custom Java Maven container because Maven builds Java. If you have your Ruby application, you're going to create, or you're going to pull a Docker image for Ruby, and you're going to use that Docker image for Ruby to build your Ruby application, right? That's essentially what it is. So here, if I had a Ruby application, I'll pull, instead of using this image that AWS is using, I'll use my own image and I'll build my Ruby application and I'll deploy it pretty much. So the build takes long for some reason. I just think it's availability issues with AWS. But yeah, this is just me being a spoiled bride, man. We'll talk about things that will happen in seconds, in minutes, and I'm complaining. Yeah, any other question, guys? So yeah, see the build is complete. So now it's sending me a notification. You see? It's telling me that my approval is needed. So I'll be sitting in my house and automatically I'll get a notification on my phone saying, oh, there was a build that just passed. We need your approval to deploy it to production so customers can see. So I'll just get my email on my phone. You can use your email. You see, it's telling me that my pipeline, you need to approve it. Usually you can go on there and approve it. You can also approve, sometimes you can even approve it from your phone. And then now I'll go back and say, okay, well, I see here, review, right? I'm going to come and say, okay, let me review. I review. And then I'll say, okay, I can put a comment and say, I can say good job or whatever I want to do, right? And I say, okay, approve. Once I approve, you see automatically it deploys it for me. So now let me make sure that it's been deployed. You see? It's deployed it for me. So there you go. It says deploying, but it looks like it already deployed. It says it's deploying, but it already deployed. So that's how you can start using SSL notification to know when deployments are happening, who's deploying at what time. And I'm hoping that I'm going to get another notification telling me that the pipeline succeeded when it's all said and done. So it's all deployed. So I'll reload and you can see that everything has been done. My manual approval, I approved it. You know, I'm the boss. You know, I approved that stuff. Now it's in production. People can consume. So yeah, so you know, I set up my notification to let me know when it succeeds or it fails. That one hasn't kicked in yet. I think it might be because I haven't attached that notification to my actual, you know, pipeline. But yeah, but you know, that's nothing to worry about. You know, everything's working. We have a one. These are a few pipeline working on. Each time I make a change, my pipeline builds it and deploys it to my server. So guys, that's it for the project for today. Any other questions?
Yeah, let me ask a quick question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah, you made mention from the beginning that before deploying, you're used to like maybe create like a little tab for other engineers to review your. So you have mentioned
peer
that.
review.
Yeah. So I want to understand, like after deploying, must they review it, or is it just going to go to the consumers directly without other engineers looking at your work?
Well, remember, that's not going to happen here, right? All that review is going to happen before it even gets sourced, right? So if in that case, this is where it's going to happen, you see? So you're going to create your own branch, right? And you're going to push that branch, and off of that branch, you're going to create a pull request, right? Remember, what I said was the build is always going to come from master, right? So if I come in and I created a branch, you know, like, you know, called DevOps. And after I created that branch, you know, I made a change. Oops. I made a change to my code, like here. And I push that, once I make my change, I'm going to push that change in. So I'm going to obviously add, commit, and push. Oh yeah, just set your upstream to your branch. And I push it's going to go to my branch. So what I'm expecting now is it shouldn't trigger any pipeline. You know what I mean? It shouldn't trigger any pipeline because I didn't push the master branch. So where is it? Where's the code pipeline? I don't know if how can I put this in another page. Yeah, I'm going to open the browser. The pipeline, I see it didn't trigger anything because it's not in the master branch. So now that I pushed, I'll go back to my AWS demo, right? And I'm going to see my branch. If I come here, I see there's a master branch, I see there's a DevOps branch, right? I'll come in and I'll say, I want to create a pull request, right? The source is my DevOps branch. I'm trying to merge it into master, right? So I'm going to, create that pull request. And then you see, it's telling me exactly what I changed. I changed this line. So I create a pull request. I said, Bajo, please review my new change and approve. That's the name of my pull request. I'm just going to post it there, right? And then I'll create my pull request, right? So now my pull request is created. I'll take now this pull request link, and that's a link that I'm going to send to anybody, right? That needs to approve that change. So if I come here and I say, if I click on pull request, I'm going to see one pull request here, right? It needs approval. So now I'm going to share now my pull request. I'm going to tell my developers. Most of the time when you have pull requests, you're gonna have people that you add to your pull request, right? For example, here, you can put different rules, and say approval, and then you can make change. And you can also, because I don't have anybody in this AWS account, I can't add, but yeah, this is a pull request that you're gonna say, okay, guys, I want you to go review this change that I just did, right, Bajo?
Yeah.
They're going to come, they're going to click on it, and then they're going to be able to come here and say changes. And you see, he's showing them that Bajo just changed his line. If they like what they're seeing, they're just gonna merge it, right? If they like what they're seeing, they're just gonna merge it. Once they merge it to master, bam, then I'm expecting that as soon as getting to master, it's going to trigger my pipeline for me, right? That's what I'm expecting. So in a minute, we should see our pipeline getting triggered. So that's exactly what this does, guys. You see that? It's already building. It's already detected a change and it's already building. See that? So yeah, the pull request happens even before the pipeline starts. So once it's done, I should see just Valentine's. It shouldn't be any day. So yeah, any other question? In the meantime, one thing I wanted to show you all before we leave is, like I mentioned before, that I like to use the command line, right? And the reason why I like the command line is, you can do pretty much anything you want to do on the desktop using the command line, right? So, but to use the command line, there's a few things that you have to do. So if you're watching this video or anywhere, to use the command line, you need to, first of all, install the AWS command line interface, right? The AWS, if you're watching this video, the AWS command line interface is called AWS CLI. You need to install the command line interface to be able to use it. So when you get to this point in the video, just go to your Google and just type AWS CLI installation. It's so easy to install. It's like a 2 to 3 step process. See, it even tells you, if it's for Linux, this is what you need to run. For Mac, this is what you need to run. For Windows, this is what you need to run. So just come here, install the CLI. It's probably a 1-step command, 2-step command. Once you install your CLI, you can come here, and the way you check on your terminal, you can say which AWS. It's going to tell you your dependables. Remember, guys, I told you Linux is so important because we're going to use Linux from the beginning of the class where we learn how to use Linux to the end of the class. You're always going to be using Linux. So now I can check, because I already installed the AWS CLI, I can check and say, okay, what's the version on my AWS CLI? Or is the version, is it double dashes? Yeah, so my version is going to give me my version. Last I verify to make sure that your installation is there. Once you have your AWS CLI, there's one other thing that you have to do to be able to use your command line interface. The second thing that you have to do is you come to IAM roles, you come to your user, right? Click on your user, come to users, click on the username, and you come to security credentials. Guys, you know, it's kind of fast, but I'm happy because we have the video. So once you're watching the video, you have time to pause. Come to security credentials, and you're going to come here and create what we call access key. You see, I already have 2, so I can't create anymore. But once you create you click this, and you're going to create an access key. It's going to create a file, a CSV file, where you're going to download into your machine, right? And that CSV file is just going to have your access key, and it's going to have your access key ID. I'll show you what that looks like. So, in fact, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and delete one of this, and then just do it so you can see it live. So which one has been here? So I created this today. What's the date? Okay, so this is the one I created today. This is the old one. It's been active, but I haven't used it for a while. So let's just go ahead and delete that, and then I'll recreate it so you can see. This is the one for my laptop, but you know, it's all right. I can always recreate them. So anyway, so this is, if I want to delete it, I have to deactivate it in the first place. And then once I deactivate it, I can delete it. So anyway, so now I'm going to come here and create my access key, right? You see this file that I created? You download that file. Once you download that file, you're going to have your secret access key and your secret access key ID, your secret access key and your secret key ID. So this is like the API key. You have the ID, you have the key to the ID. Guys, this is very important. Nobody's going to teach you this. No class is going to teach you this. No one taught me this, but you need it when you're on the job. So more than likely, you learn this on the job, you know, but you know, I'm showing you now just so you know. This access key, this is what you need to be able to communicate with the AWS account without logging into it, pretty much, right? So now you have this information, you're going to copy it, right? And you're going to go to your machine. For Windows, it might be different. But for Mac, there's a file called, you know, when you're watching this video from home, there's a file called, I'm just going to cut that file. It's in your home, AWS. This is what it's called. If you don't have that file, you can recreate it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that file using the same editor that we all know about, which is our VI. I'll open that file, and under here, I'm going to add that information that I just created. You know, but you know, I won't do it today because I already have one here. But yeah, this is where you're just going to copy this. Go online and you copy a similar thing. Like you're going to see everything is online on AWS documentation. Just search AWS configure, and you just create a simple file like this, a default access key. You put this key. For the second access key, you put this key, and that's it, guys. That's all you need to do. Once you set that up, right, then guess what? Your account is automatically connected. Your machine, your desktop, your Mac terminal is already connected to your AWS account. So now you can use now your Mac terminal to do any kind of API calls that you want to do on it. But for example, I want to list my S3 buckets. This is all I'll do. S3, I'll do AWS S3, and then LS. You see that? It just listed to me all my S3 buckets that I have in AWS. And if you wanted to see, if you're curious to see that the API is correct, I'll come to S3 and I'll show you all my buckets. And you see that those are all the buckets that I have. So let's go to S3. And you see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buckets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buckets. You see, it listed all the buckets that I have. And it looks like it even listed the date that they were created. And it gave me all of them, their names. I could delete the bucket from here. I could list anything. I could list, so now to use that API, the way you can use that API is, you know, like I said, everything's online, guys. This thing is not rocket science. Once you set up your credentials in your file, you're all set. Now you just think in your head is, what do I want to do? okay, now in me, personally, I'm thinking, I want to describe my EC2 instances that I have running, right? That's what I'm thinking right now. So I'll come and say AWS EC2 CLI, commands pretty much. That's how easy. Just come to Google, whatever you're thinking, whatever you want, just search it and open that documentation, and then you're going to just scroll down. You're going to have to get used to using documentation. So because that's the life of a DevOps engineer. So it's going to tell you all these different CLI commands that you could use, guys. Think about it. This is all the things that you can do from your machine without even having to log into your AWS. And this is just for EC2. You go to EKS, you go to ECS, you go to code deploy, you go to CloudFormation. Anything on AWS, you can be able to manipulate from your command line without logging into your console. That's just the concept that I just wanted to show you guys. It's a very important concept. And most likely when you start working, you wouldn't want to go to the console every single time and click. You just want to do something from your command line. Me personally, I'm a big fan of working with my command line because it's easier, it's faster. And I don't even need to log into my AWS account. So there was one time for a whole 2 weeks, I forgot my password. My AWS account wasn't working, but I didn't care. I was just using the command line, until I got it fixed. So let's just see one of these examples here. You can attach a volume. You can cancel tags. You can copy an image, guys. You can do anything that you could do on a machine. You can create a VPC. See that? You can create a VPC. You can create a volume. I'm just going to look for one that is really easy. Any of this, you can do it from your command line, guys, if you have the right permission. You can delete a VPC. You can okay, this is the one I want to do. I want to describe my EC2 instances. So what command do I need? Is AWS, so the way I do it is whenever I come, I don't look at all these outputs. I first of all come to the example, right? And say, I look at the example, I just copy the example. And you see, it's telling you that to describe an instance, you need the instance ID. So this one is a bit of a bummer, right? But good thing is, I'll just come here and pull out the instance ID. But sometimes you can just, first of all, query for the instance ID, right? Once you query for the instance ID, you get it, and then now you can just come here and then put in your code. So let me show you. I'm gonna go in, I wanna describe that instance. I wanna get all the information that there is about that instance. So I put that, and then I come here, I just copy the ID from here. And I come here and I put it there, and I said enter. And I'm submitting what we call an API request. So do you see that? It returned to me with all the information about the instance. The AMI launch index, the AMI, the date, the private DNS, the public DNS. So if I wanted to access my application, I could just copy this information here. And just go to my web page and say, okay, let me check out that application. You see that? It took me to my application. So yeah, so guys, this is high level information I'm teaching you. Like I told you, I'm not holding anything back. So now you have all the information you need. You can even go as far as pulling this information in a code and using it on the fly without even, you can access any information in here and put in your code. So guys, what I want you to take out of this part of the class is anything that you can do on your console, you can click on your console, you can do it from your command line, like I'm doing right now. You can delete an EC2 instance. You can terminate an EC2 instance. So let me terminate one of my instances right now before we end the class. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna say I want to terminate. I want to delete my instance. I want to terminate one of my instances. So you see how I can delete. I can, instead of going and clicking and terminating, I can do it from my command line. So I'll show you how I can do it right now. So I want to terminate my instance. So I'll just go to my example as usual. I'll copy my example. Guys, everything is online. Like I said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That I just copy the example, I just paste it. I need the instance ID. So I don't want to terminate this, so I want to terminate the old instance that I had. So I'm just going to copy the instance ID, and I'm just going to paste it there, and I'm going to hit, and guess what? It's going to automatically terminate that instance without even me logging in, right? You see, there was an API response here. It's telling me that the state it was running. What am I doing? I'm shutting it down. Current state, shutting down. And if I come here, you're going to see shutting down. You see, it's already been shutting down. You see, it's shutting down. It's telling me right here that it's shutting down. It's going to shut down that instance and it's going to terminate the instance. Guys, isn't that cool? So yeah, so I'm doing everything basically from my command line. See, it's terminated the instance for me, you know, without me having to come here, click, come here, actions, or instance state, all that kind of stuff, man. You don't have time for that shit. And you can do this. So yeah, it's terminated an instance for me. So that's how you can use the command line. So if you're watching this video, yeah, that's a very valuable part of AWS that you need to understand, or you just need to know that it's available for you to use and to consume. So guys, we've come to the end of this class. Any remarks, any questions? Oh, Yochi, thank you too, man, bro. Yeah, any questions, guys? So we've come to the end of it. I'm just going to stop recording just so we don't have too long of a video, so to upload, because with the longer videos it takes a lot of time. So I'm just going to stop. First of all, I'll stop share. And then I can